Okay, number 8. Jesus was just a good man, not God. Again, that's a statement. It's not a straw man. A straw man would be for me to build some aspects of your Jesus that weren't true, just so I could just demolish this Jesus. Now, don't mistake this for making guesses about what this Jesus was based on available information. In my view, there was a rabbi that's attributed to the name Jesus. That was a teacher. He was not a god. He was not a God-man. And the story of Jesus, the more supernatural aspects of it, are derived from earlier mythologies, such as Dionysus and Mithra and things like that. Zoroastrianism. Now, these aren't strawmen. These are guesses. They're hypotheses. They're based on information that's out there. Now, in this last little bit on this one, you say that if we don't agree that Jesus is God, we're calling him a liar, and hence he's not a good man. Now, good men can be liars. Lying is something we do. I don't see it as sin because I don't have a concept of sin. I mean, I understand what the biblical concept of sin is and what a Christian's concept of sin is, but to me, sin doesn't exist. Lying has its uses. Sometimes they're necessary, actually, to help people out. Tell a kid that a vaccination shot won't hurt. It will, but the kid needs that. So the view that lying is such a absolutely negative thing, which it can be, isn't entirely true. It's an aspect of our socio-political behaviorisms. We try to keep the peace in general, and sometimes we have to lie to do it. Now, lying has different levels, different degrees of where it's positive to negative. Like I said, lying to a kid about the pain of a shot. I mean, the kid's going to know you lied, but it allows you to get the shot in there. That's a lie that actually promotes a positive outcome. Of course, some people lie to, for instance, con men to separate fools from their money. Now, that lie has a negative outcome. Maybe not for the con man, unless he gets caught, but it definitely has a negative impact on one person in that pair. And that lie would be considered, I would consider a bad lie. So it really depends on where you're coming at. Okay, so claims strawman number 9. Why is there evil? That's a question. Again, it's not a straw man. And it's a valid one if you define certain aspects of God, being that he's omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. It becomes a problem for the theist in this sense because an omnibenevolent God is an all-good God. And an all-good God, we're taking and extrapolating from that view, that happens to also be omnipotent, would not allow evil to exist, especially evil that causes suffering, because an all-good person or an all-good thing would prevent that. I mean, to be honest, if I'm on the street and I see someone being, beaten, I'm going to step in. I mean, that's just how I see it. When it comes to, robbery, strong-arm robbery, I'll step in. I may not step in for when there's a gun involved, simply because, I do value my life, but I certainly won't stand by and do nothing. I'll at least call the police. Now, your God, or the God that's described by these 3 traits, maybe not yours, we'd have to have you define your God yourself and make it a very clean definition. Otherwise, there's too many confusions as to what you're saying. But in this God, as defined as having omnipotence, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, it is a contradiction. If this God exists having those 3 traits, then evil cannot exist. Or this God is willing to allow evil to exist, but then he can't be omnibenevolent anymore because he's willing to allow something that is evil to exist, and he's not being all good. And if he doesn't allow evil to exist, or I should say, if evil exists because he cannot do anything about it, then he's not omnipotent. So that's where the argument comes in. I mean, it may not reflect all aspects of God's claimed. That's where you have to define God properly. And actually, I would like to see you make a video on that, defining the properties of God. It would be kind of important to know where you stand on this, because different Christians and different theists view the properties of God differently. And it would probably help all of us when it comes to this discussion and future discussions to understand where you're coming from. However, I do warn you that defining your God could also lead to more strong arguments against your claims. Obviously, the argument of evil, if you define your God having these three properties of omniscience, omnipotence, and omnibenevolent, the problem of evil is a real problem. I know I didn't state it as well as I could have, but I'm trying to do this before I go to work today. Okay, on to the next. Well, I thought I was done with that. After reviewing a little bit of what you had said, that you think yourself a good guy, but that doesn't mean that you have to prevent others from doing bad things. I totally disagree with that. If you're a good person, and you choose to be a good person, and you feel yourself to be a good person, it is your obligation to do what you can to prevent others from doing bad things to other people. If you can't do it, I mean, that's understandable. But if you can do something and you choose not to do something, well, that's pretty bad, and you're not really a good person. If we get back to certain examples, like several months ago, near my job, an old lady, probably in her 70s, was being harassed by skaters, by skate kids. Now, I make jokes about them. I might eventually make jokes about skate kids and me hating them, but truthfully, I don't. My nephew's a skater, and he's a pretty cool guy. If I was to step back and just let that happen, I wouldn't see myself as a good person. Instead, being a big guy, and I mean, really big guy, I stepped in and intervened. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, isn't that part of the definition of being good? I mean, good isn't something that's just entirely internalized. It's not something you do unto yourself and to this God of yours by following these certain commandments. No, good is also externalizing your views, externalizing the willingness to help and defend others, especially those that aren't capable of doing it themselves. And if you have that capability and you don't use it, you're not good. You're neutral. And I mean, I really have very little respect for a purely neutral individual. Well, I'm kind of getting a little off the subject, so I'm going to stop on this point there. But just to restate it, a good person that is capable of helping another and chooses not to is not a good person. They're a neutral person. They're not necessarily evil, but they could be seen as such by some.